Hidden Figures, Chapter 10, No Limits. In April 1951, a few months after Dorothy Vaughan became the boss of the West Area Computing Pool, 26-year-old Mary Winston Jackson came to work for her. Mary was new to the Langley Memorial Aeronautical Laboratory, but not new to the area. Mary and her family had deep roots in Hampton, Virginia. She grew up listening to the work songs of the black women shucking oysters at the processing plant in town. As a child, she heard elders at the black churches in town telling stories about sitting under a large oak tree across the river and listening to the Union soldiers read the Emancipation Proclamation, the edict issued by Abraham Lincoln in 1863 during the Civil War, which freed the slaves in the South. Mary went to school in Hampton. In 1938, she graduated from Phoenix High School with highest honors. She enrolled at Hampton Institute, where she pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha, the same black sorority that Dorothy Vaughan and many of the other West computers had joined when they were in college. Most of the Hampton Institute's female students earned degrees in home economics or nursing, but Mary studied mathematics and physical science. After graduation, she took a teaching job in Maryland. The following year, her father became sick, and she returned to Hampton to help care for him. Back home, she took a position at a community center run by the United States Organization, USO, a nonprofit group that provides services and entertainment to United States soldiers. She helped military families and defense workers find places to live, played the piano during sing-alongs, and helped organize Girl Scout troop meetings and rallies. At one of the USO dances, Mary met Levi Jackson, an enlistee at the Naval School run by the Hampton Institute. They fell in love and married in 1944. Always an independent-minded woman, Mary passed up the all-white bridal gown for a shorter white dress with black sequins, accessorized with black gloves, black pumps, and a red rose corsage. Mary Winston, now Mary Jackson, did things her own way, raising expectations. When World War II ended, Levi Jackson found work as a painter at Langley Field. The USO closed and Mary searched for a new job. She worked briefly as a bookkeeper, but left after the birth of her son. For a while, she was a busy stay-at-home mom. Even though taking care of her son kept her busy, Mary always found time for activities that made her happy. One of the things she loved the most was leading Girl Scout Troop 11, which was affiliated with her church. The organization's commitment to preparing women to take their place in the world with a mission of respect for God and country and of honesty and loyalty embodied Mary's core beliefs. She took the girls on 3-mile hikes and field trips to the crab factory to learn more about what their parents did for work. She took them to an afternoon tea at the Hampton Institute Mansion House, where the college's president and his family lived. For the first time in history, Hampton Institute's president was black. The grand president's residence was occupied by a black family. It was a sight the girls never forgot, an impeccable black staff in a fabulous house serving a black family. Mary Jackson understood how impressionable the young girls were. At a troop meeting, the group sang the folk tune, "Pick a Bale of Cotton." It was a well-known song that she had sung countless times before, but that day it was as if she heard the words for the first time. "We're going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton." She realized it was talking about slavery times in the South, and she didn't want to keep the idea alive. "Hold on a minute," she interrupted. "We are never going to sing this again." She explained that the song reinforced all the worst stereotypes about what it meant to be black. She told the girls they could be much more than that. Maybe Mary couldn't remove the limits that society put on the girls, but it was her duty to try to make sure the girls didn't put limits on themselves. Their dark skin, their gender, their economic status, none of these were reasons not to live out their dreams. "You can do better. We can do better," she told them every day. For Mary Jackson, life was a long process of raising one's expectations. Working at Langley. When her son turned 4, Mary Jackson filled out an application with the Civil Service, applying both for a secretarial position and a job, and also for a job as a computer at Langley. In January 1951, she was hired as a secretary at Fort Monroe, an Army base in Hampton. She was required to get a security clearance because of the document she handed during working for military officers. Following World War II, the United States had become anxious about the threat posed by the Soviet Union. Though the two countries had been allies during the war, their relationship was less friendly, especially after the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb. The United States and the Soviet Union didn't trust one another. The word spread that the Soviet Union had flown planes over Korea in 1950 that were too fast to be identified. A headline in the 1950 Norfolk Journal and Guide read, "Russians said to have fastest fighter plane. The United States had just assumed that it ruled the skies with a fast and powerful fleet of airplanes. After all, the country had led the way through the sound barrier with Chuck Yeager in 1947, but by 1950, however, the ANACA estimated that the Russians expended at least 3 times the manpower in their research establishments compared to what the United States budgeted. The National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics asked Congress for a larger budget, and eventually Langley started hiring again. The long list of job openings published in Air Scoop was similar to those of the boom time during the war. America had no intention of backing down or surrendering the skies to any other country. Given Mary Jackson's background in mathematics, it came as no surprise that the government offered her a job working at Langley. Mary resigned from her job at the Army base and went to work for Dorothy Vaughan. No speed limits. The NACA engineers had successfully broken the sound barrier, but they knew that in order to stay ahead of the Russians, they had to build even faster planes, not just experimental aircrafts, but ones that could be put into production for the military. For America to continue its present challenge supremacy in the air will require that it develop tactical military aircraft that will fly faster than sound before any other nation does so. The NACA's executive secretary said in the Norfolk Journal and Guide, Mach 1 was just the beginning. Engineers and pilots dreamed of flying with no speed limits. Some engineers imagined a day where pilots could fly at Mach 5 or faster, 3,800 miles per hour. The laboratory built new wind tunnels capable of conducting research at velocities from below the speed of sound up to Mach 7, a tunnel so fast it was labeled hypersonic. The engineers and mathematicians like Dorothy and Mary sharpened their pencils and got to work to try to figure out how to send humans flying through the air at speeds that even a decade before would have been unimaginable. The communist threat. On April 5, 1951, the same day that Mary Jackson started her job at Langley, a New York federal court handed down a death sentence against Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, a couple accused of spying for the Russians. The Rosenberg trial sparked widespread fear that communist sympathizers, people who believed in communism, Russia's political system, were living inside the United States and plotting to overthrow the American government. At Langley, the Rosenberg trial and its repercussions hit close to home.
Will the following seniors please come to the main office? Nick Preshow, Marlon Portillo, Noah Quang, Drew Rubenking, Blake Schipper, Sydney Smetzer, Kylan Watkins to the main office.
Sorry, we're at the top of page 83. At Langley, the Rosenberg trial and its repercussions hit close to home. An engineer was accused of stealing classified National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics documents and giving them to the Soviet Union. Some of the stolen secrets included plans for a nuclear-powered airplane and designs for parts of a high-speed aircraft. The engineer was eventually cleared of spying charges, but he was convicted of lying about his relationship with the Rosenbergs. Suddenly, Americans were afraid that there might be spies all around them. Even in their neighborhoods or at work, the FBI interviewed Langley employees. Many workers were terrified of the investigators who sometimes came to their homes unannounced. While no one was above suspicion, the investigators focused their attention on anyone involved with the organizations that the government had decided were dangerous. The FBI accused people involved with many organizations of being sympathetic to the communists and their beliefs. The fear of communism ruined many lives and livelihoods, even when people were innocent. Virginia's Senator Harry Byrd, the same politician who had criticized the Fair Employment Practices Law for the World War II, stirred up another frenzy by labeling anyone who disagreed with his view of traditional American values as a communist. But President Harry S. Truman saw a different way to deal with communism. He wanted to show that the United States version of democracy was the best system in the world, encouraging developing countries, including many in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, to become American allies. To prove that America was trying to be more fair to people with dark skin, President Truman desegregated the military, allowing blacks and whites to serve side by side in the armed forces. Truman also made the head of each federal department personally responsible for maintaining a work environment free of discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, or national origin. Was discrimination taking place at Langley? On the one hand, the black women were still racially segregated into the West computing office. The laboratory has one work unit composed entirely of Negro women. The West area computers, which may fall into the category of segregated work unit, wrote one of Langley's administrative officers in a 1951 memo. However, the memo continued, a large percentage of employees are usually detailed to work in a non-segregated units for periods of 1 to 3 months. Over time, women like Dorothy Hoover, West Computing's others, Dorothy, had begun to leave the computing pool and go to work in other offices, sitting next to white engineers and computers. The women knew that the best way to fight discrimination at work was to do their work as well as they possibly could. The mathematical equation didn't care what color they were as long as the answers were correct.